Hopefully I'm live. Am I live?
You're live and we're all live. He's in. He's joining us from his boat. Ladies and gentlemen, out there on the live stream, welcome to the Studio Rats live Q&A. This week, we are once again joined by greatness. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the south coast of England, as I say, on his boat, Mr. Trevor Coley from Sontronics.
Good evening. Good evening. Hello, hello. Good morning, wherever you are.
All that sort of stuff. Trevor, for those of I posted on the glory that is Facebook, one of my very favorite people in the industry, because right back at the beginning of my career doing this sort of stuff, I met this bloke who made microphones, and we chatted for about, well, what felt like 3 days. I think it was at one of those events at SAE in London.
There were two things. First one was SAE, and the second was at Absolute Music.
Yeah, that's right.
This was at the very early stages of Sontronics as well. And you were doing a demo of the Avid 11 rack, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I remember being mesmerized by your talents, I have to say, to such an extent that I actually went and bought an 11 rack. However, I confess that my talents are nowhere near close to yours, so I've never opened it. It's sat in my study at home in its box, unwrapped for probably it's 10 years. It will be 10 years.
Seriously? Mustn't it?
Wow. So I just didn't have the nerve to open it, because you even sent me all the patches that you'd done for the Dave Gilmour settings and all of this stuff. And I was just too embarrassed to even it was disgraceful. It was disgraceful.
Wow. But the funny thing was, from that particular event, I remember you showing me a Saturn for the first time.
That's right.
And going, ooh, got to get me one of those. And then, of course, had to get me two of those for overheads.
That's right. I remember. Wow.
So we go back a little way. Trevor, for those of you who don't know about you and your marvelous microphone company, I didn't actually realize I was on brand this morning. How amazing is that?
Hey,
that's
top work.
Tell us a little bit about you, about Sontronics, how it all started, your kind of journey into the craziness that is pro audio microphones and all that loveliness.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't want to send anyone to sleep, but I'll try and encapsulate it. I mean, I'm pushing on towards the big 50, not far off now, and for the majority of my life, I've been connected to music one way or another, and even when I was a kid, I was, ages 6, 7, I was recording with my parents' reel-to-reel tape machine and just sort of singing over the charts and recording without realizing that was the sort of beginning of a career move. And as time went on, became a guitarist, self-taught guitarist at the age of 12, and then started working at as a Saturday boy in a music shop, local music shop. And I was always into guitar and stuff, very interested. And then started writing songs, just learning to play and plinking together a few chords and stuff. Had a little band at school, Riders of the Storm, and Hell Bent on Leather, if I remember, was one of the other names. Yeah, I think I've got the tape somewhere. And then I met my closest and oldest friend, Alan Barclay, who is coincidentally the owner of Absolute Music Solutions. And he is a bassist, and he used to program the drum machine, and I was a guitarist and songwriter and singer. I don't say that, but I did sing. But we did all that, and we were actually quite good. It was when Appetite for Destruction came out, Guns N' Roses and all that sort of stuff. So we learned that almost off pat, reasonably so. But one of the things that really got to me was that every time I was recording my guitar amp, and I was using this sort of pre-wired dynamic mic from Taiwan, I could never get the same sound back into the tape machine. It was a cassette recorder that I was hearing out of the amp. And so this sort of spurred on a quest for, well, why is that? And one of the owners of the music shop I was working in gave me this mic to try. And he said, look, give this a go. And I took it home, and it was actually an AKG C535EB. It's a handheld broadcast mic. So I plugged it in, and it didn't work. And I thought, oh, great, never mind, it was broken. But got back to the shop the next week, and he said, oh, how did you get on? And I said, well, it's broken, it don't work. And he says, it does work. What are you talking about? And I said, well, I plugged it in and it's not working at all. And he says, did you use the phantom power? And I was like, what are you talking about? It means nothing to me. And he said, oh, for goodness sake. So he gave me this little battery powered box, another AKG thing. And goodness me, I plugged it in and it was like, bing, you could hear everything, absolutely everything. So that was really the beginning of the journey into microphones and sort of realizing how absolutely fundamental they are to the whole process of audio, you know, be it on stage or recording. So that was the beginning of that. I left school fairly early. I left school at 16, having not paid any attention to my classes for the last year of school. But I wasn't stupid. I decided to get a job straight away, and off I went into the world of work, into financial services. But that was dull as ditch water. It was just watching people's money and telling people that their pension that they'd saved for 50 years is now worth less than it was the money they put into it. It was quite depressing, but I was still involved in music all the time. And one day, every Thursday in this town local to us in Bournemouth here in Dorset in England, we all used to go to the pub on a Thursday afternoon at lunchtime, and we would get the newspaper which had the job advertising in the back. And this showed you how miserable everyone was in this town, because we were all coming from the offices reading the job ads. No one was happy. But lo and behold, there was this ad jumped out. It says, are you interested in music? Can you sell things? You know, blah, blah. And I was just ticking all these boxes. There was a company called the Music Corporation. And
MCOR.
Right. Well, that's MCOR.
Wow.
All right. But it sounded so grand and so amazing. And it was just like, this is incredible. So me being me, I jumped on my motorbike and I actually wrote off and got an interview. And I thought, right, before I go for the interview, I'll do some prep and go and find where the place is, so I'm not late and all this sort of stuff. And I'm driving up and down this road looking for this big building, and you know, where is this M Corporation thing or whatever, Music Corporation? And the address kept leading me back, because we didn't have sat nav or anything back then, did we? So I was scribbled it down on a bit of paper, and it was a residential street. And up and down. Right. Okay. I went down this driveway and I knocked on the door and I said, look, I'm looking for the Music Corporation. Could you tell me where it might be? And he says, oh, no, it's here. It's next door. And just pointed to this double garage next door. And I just had this chill go over me. And I'm thinking, oh, great. And I thought, do I just walk away now? And, you know, I've got a job and blah, blah. I thought, oh, do you know what? And I knocked on the door and opened the door, and the smell of the studio just wafted over me, and there was this it was an amazing sort of, well, project studio, I suppose you could call it, but it was commercial, and it had an old Tascam desk in there, an M3700 I think it was, Uri monitors, the timeline monitors that we're all knowing about, and just every bit of analog gear that you'd know, and synths and stuff. Just the smell of all the mica and everything all warmed up, and it was just heaven. And so I took the interview, and long story short, eventually got the job, and that was the beginning. And that's 28 years ago, I think now. That's something like that. So it's been a journey, and throughout the time I moved on from there a few years later. I mean, that was a functioning studio and mastering studio. We were the only appointment based retailer in the UK at the time, so it was an incredible place to meet.
You wouldn't be right now.
Well, there is that. It could be coming back round again. I mean, you know what? These things come in cycles. Not that we asked them to, but you know, that's not a bad idea. You know, at the end of the day, it worked, and it worked so successfully that we were working with, or our clients, dare I say, were incredibly talented people. Some of whom are incredibly famous now, and of course weren't at the time. So I won't drop names, but at the end of the day, amazing people came through that building, and really was a great start to my life. And then on from there, running another music store in the local area, Eddie Moore's Music, became general manager of that store for a while. And you know what? Time went on, and I really got to enjoy myself, and basically got into working for another company, Soundcraft. You probably know of the Mixing Corporation, and they were an incredible company to work for. Learned a lot about a large corporation. You know, it was part of the Harman Group. So you were involved in a very different entity then. It was, as I say, a corporate structure. But I got some travel all over the world and really learned a lot more about the industry. And then got involved with bringing another microphone brand in from China into Europe, and launched that, and had a bit of time with that and learned about microphones a lot more, and how could things be improved. There was an awful lot of stuff coming in from Asia at the time, and everything seemed to have this same thin and crispy sound to it. It might look good, and some of it may have been made well, not all of it, but some of it was. But actually the commonality was this really sibilant, sort of harsh sound that was just throughout everything.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, we're going back now 17, 18 years, and so the prices were probably 2 or 3 times more than a base level mic is now. So you think that you're probably spending £300-400 on something, we would consider that an expensive or mid-range microphone these days. Well, that was the starting point then. So people were spending that sort of money on something that wasn't great, and I thought, I think I can do better. And so then began my journey into creating Sontronics. So started with a kind of blueprint in my mind that it was nobody that I was aware of, and I stepped back if somebody had thought about this, but no brand that I was aware of was making a microphone for what I would say is the digital recording era. Everyone was regurgitating the past. And the irony is with our music industry that technology in most analog equipment is finite. You don't need to move beyond it. When we compare things like you don't need to reinvent the wheel, I suppose, is the simplest way of putting it. And a microphone is an incredibly simple transducer in its sense, as is a speaker. One in, one out. It's a very simple process. There are things you can do to embellish it. There are things you can do to control it. The housing, the producer sits within, the materials the product is made from, the materials the transducer's made from, the quality of electronic components used, if there are any. All of these things can be improved, but with that often comes a cost implication. So my idea was, right, okay, can I improve all of these issues but maintain a reasonable price point and keep the quality high? Because I'm going to be judged by the peers of the industry. If I can talk about microphone brands, the Neumanns, the AKGs at the time, these are brands that people, they aspire to, and they will always sit there as benchmarks for our industry. Not always great, because they're just not, but they've been there and they've proven themselves. It's like a Model T, Ford Model T car is not a great car, but you know what? It started something and it proved itself. So this is what I wanted to do. And ultimately, I suppose more than anything, I wanted to create a legacy brand, because you look at Neumann and Telefunken and AKG and all of these wonderful old names, and actually owning one, the owners of these things treat them like they are something so special. The nostalgia that goes with it, it's like owning an antique, is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So if you are an antiques collector or an art collector, you're just so emotive about that product. It just brings something to you. So I just wanted to make my mark, so that in 40 years time, when I'm gone, perhaps, there's something left behind for the industry, and maybe people revere Sontronics mics as they do those other major brands.
So fast forwarding a little to the NAMM show 2019.
It's my NAMM mug. My vintage NAMM mug. How's that for timing? Oh, yeah.
And I remember chatting with you on the show floor and you showing me the red beastie that you're currently talking into.
Yeah.
And saying to me, yeah, I'll let you have one soon. We haven't got many. I went, okay, well, let me try it as and when. It's been quite, well, let's say that COVID-19 has definitely had its effect on certain industries, for the better and for the worse.
Yeah.
But I would say podcasting and or live broadcast in this sort of environment, things like live stream and StreamYard and all that, and YouTube Live and Facebook Live and all those sort of things, it's quite a big player now in, well, the world, world that we live in, and it doesn't necessarily mean music. It could be anything, any form of the arts, any form of creativity. I think it's fair to say timing was definitely on your side, bringing out a podcasting microphone.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I stand to correct you because it was 2020. It was this year. It was NAMM.
So it was this year, wasn't it?
Wow.
Yes.
We have had a NAMM this year.
Yes.
The thing is, I mean, for those people listening and watching this now that have heard of NAMM or maybe have never heard of NAMM, I mean, the big thing about NAMM is this huge convention where every manufacturer in the audio industry all attends this huge convention in Los Angeles or just outside Los Angeles. And it is just phenomenal because it's such a meeting place of common minds and common spirit and common thought.
And big drinkers.
Hello. I couldn't comment.
Jen's not watching. It's okay.
You never touch the drop. No, I mean, look, the thing, what I was watching, and you'll understand this, that what we've seen, we have 3 adult children now. I mean, our boys are 18, twin boys, and our daughter's 19. So,
and congratulations to them both on their recent A-level results as well.
Yeah,
by the
thank you very much. Thank you very much. No, we're very proud of all of them. And what we've seen and what we were noticing was that, the way people consume media. I mean, look at what we're doing here. Okay, this is a miracle, for goodness sake. There's 3 people talking from disparate environments, and hopefully other people are watching us do this. But you know what? This is unbelievable. Yeah, I can be sat there looking at a circuit diagram for an analog microphone and just be stuck and blinking into my old ways, and this is it, isn't it? It's a nostalgic thing. And we sort of are anchored in the past if we're not careful. What I found with the kids was that the way they were consuming media was invariably via their phones, so their iPhones, smartphones and devices. And it will probably be YouTube is the most popular because there is a platform for anyone, and I mean anyone, to do what they need to do and express themselves within reason. And I started thinking, well, okay, one of the things about Sontronics is that, I mentioned this to people before, and people that have attended my workshops and stuff would have heard this, but I always wanted to create the sort of quickest route to solving a problem. So making an application specific microphone is so much simpler to a customer when they, I'm a guitarist. Do you do a guitar mic? Yes, here it is. Are you a drummer? I got a drum mic for you. So we never had a podcast mic, but of course there are others in the marketplace. And so I studied that marketplace for about a year. And I'm not going to knock anyone's products, but what I'm going to say is what I found was that there were 2 or 3 that were market leaders. The interesting thing was that, I'm going to say this outright, none of them was what I would consider to be a professional quality microphone in terms of broadcast quality, in terms of a professional mic that I could take to a BBC or someone like that, for example. So what they were was for the purpose of the user, which was invariably an amateur. It was somebody who was streaming at home, playing games and wanted to talk into something a bit more cooler than their computer microphone or a little headset thing. So I saw this, and when I was testing these other products, what I discovered that one of them that sounds really big and, well, I won't mention it, but it's an electret condenser microphone. So it's a faux condenser mic that's got processing inside, and it makes you sound big and huge and really, really cool in your headset. But when you actually listen critically, you can hear in the background all the time. And for someone that's been in audio for over 30 years, that sticks in my ears immediately. The other models had such low output that they needed a ton of gain. I mean, we're talking 50 decibels or more, maybe 60,
Which means you're getting from somewhere else.
Where do you find 60 dB of gain? Oh no, you don't. So what you need to do is buy a little inline connector box which boosts the output signal. Well, by the time you've done that, why on earth do you need to do that anyway? But by the time you've done that, you've spent a few £100 or $100 or whatever, and it's gone beyond the price of a regular consumer. But the problem is, in the world of marketing, and certainly online, people are saying, yeah, you need to get this and you get that, and then suddenly that's the thing to get. Well, that's not right from my perspective. We need to make the best thing we can for the customer. So again, began this journey of testing and working around what we already had, using the DNA that we had from other dynamic mics like our Solo handheld, the Corona dynamic mic. And so inside here lives the same capsule, but around that, remember what I was saying about the resonant chamber, the enclosure that the capsule's in, there is so much effort that has gone into what's inside this thing to actually completely cut off the actual reject sound. I should make it simpler. Reject sound from the rear and the sides so well, it's class leading. There's nothing that comes close. There's about 30 dBs of rejection from the side and rear. So you could be sat here with a washing machine in the background, someone mowing their lawn or whatever, or kids being a bit noisy. And if you're doing your podcast on, I don't know, cupcake making or dog grooming, you're not going to hear.
That's our other live stream, actually.
Exactly. But this is my point. And in fact, using that example, the key is now that the customer is no longer a pro audio consumer. It's a consumer. It's someone that's got nothing. You've already said it, James. It's someone that's got nothing to do with audio industry. It's someone that wants to get a message across. So, in the long run, what we did, we spent about just over a year, as I said, developing this product. You've seen it before, but I prototype with a 3D printer. So we've got 2 3D printers that I'll do the basic designs and get them to a working model. And then one of our chaps in the office, Gary, will finalize the drawing for me he's a SolidWorks wizard. So he will get that made up for me. We'll print it, and we'll print it's down to 100 micron tolerance. So this thing is almost perfect. And so I can actually use that model. And I'll tell you this, all of the ribbon mics, the Sigma 2, Delta 2, and Apollo 2 were all 3D printed to start with. Corona was 3D printed to start with, and Podcast Pro also. And they were all, and I have them all in the studio back at the office, they all work. They all function. So we know that this physicality works. And so that was the beginning. And we were able to get it to full production within 6.5 weeks, which is
wow.
It's just
crazy.
Mental. It's absolutely crazy. So to go back to your question or your point about what a time to launch the mic. Yeah, it was, we couldn't have foreseen what was going to happen in the world in terms of the pandemic, but we always had the plan that those customers that are now our customers would come our way because this product was for them. And we've seen the most amazing thing occur where instead of people saving for one microphone, I want that guitar mic, I want that Aria vocal mic or whatever, people are buying 3 or 4 because they're doing a round table podcast, and it's just been incredible.
That's
so
great.
Yeah, we're really grateful that people have taken notice of what we've done and worked with us on this, and it's become our fastest and most voluminously selling product in the whole history of the brand. So
Red or black?
years.
Which one has sold more, red or black?
Do you know what? It's actually equal. It's actually
really
equal. Yeah.
I thought the red would have been miles ahead of the black.
I personally love the red, and it was I got the thumbs down from most people in the office to start with, but once again, because it's eye-catching and it pops for not everyone's taste, but it pops. It's different to most other mics out there. It's a consumer product, so hopefully it becomes a bit more attractive. But the curious thing, as I say, we have sold equal quantities of both models. I mean, usually the more musical types, dare I say, would err towards black. because that fits with the studio look. But unless well, put it this way, there are two audio interface company brands that use a certain color, and one of them's black and one of them's red, and it goes as a perfect partner depending on
That's so true,
if you want to color code you. And that wasn't, I'm going to be honest, that wasn't intentional. It's simply the fact that I wanted a color that was going to pop out and look great. And so, yeah, it's been really popular.
It's also an absolutely stonking snare drum mic because of what you said about rejection.
Yeah.
Because you don't get toms and hi-hat bleeding into your snare drum.
Spill. There's no. I mean, look, you and I talked. We've talked for so many hours and hours and hours about trying mics on unusual things and whatever. And when I've said it's a this mic, you've said I've used it on that, and it's like, thanks, James. But at the end of the day, a microphone is a microphone is a microphone. It's an audio ear. So, you know what? There's a very famous microphone, a dynamic microphone from an American brand that is this sort of shape, shall we say, and is black and is.
It's all right. You can say SM7B. We're not affiliated to anyone.
But you know what? At the end of the day, and this is not to take anything away from that at all. This is only to draw a comparison. That because this says Podcast Pro on it, people may think that it's just for podcasting, but it's not. Remember what I said. This is a broadcast quality dynamic mic. If I'm making a comparison with that SM7B fine microphone, Podcast Pro has over 10 dB higher output sensitivity at 1 kilohertz, and in fact across most of the spectrum compared to that SM7. And what that means, as you know, but for most people out there that may not, that means that you need 10 decibels less gain. And it means that you don't need a boosting device. I don't know if it's a cloud lifter or something like that. You don't need that.
Sort of things, yeah.
You don't need to spend that money. Why would you waste your money? And so ultimately, you save far more money on the microphone itself. This is £99. End of. And that's it. Done. So in real terms, what we're trying to get across here is, look, this is a mic. If you want to use it on snare drum, use it on snare. And it's fantastic for snare drum. If you want to use it on guitar amps, do you know what? It's fantastic on guitar amplifiers. You can use it on brass instruments. You can use it on.
Sounds good on. As I say, it's great for trombone as well.
It is. And at the end of the day, what we've designed here is, and if I can blow my own horn to use that phrase, it's simply, this is a fantastic microphone. Okay, but we've aimed it and marketed it at a new sector, not only audio people, and we've managed to garner both sides of the industry. I will say, it's a whole new world walking into the consumer marketplace, because these customers are not necessarily educated in terms of audio equipment. They're used to buying their PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it might be, plugging it in, and boom, off you go. This takes sometimes a little more thought and process. But I'm going to bring something out of my bag. So what we've been looking at over the last few months is, how do we make life a bit simpler? I've gone off axis there. How do we make life a bit simpler for our customer? And what we've done... I get the
feeling we're about to get an exclusive here.
There you go. Here is our XLR to USB cable.
Oh, that's amazing.
This will enable you to plug directly. So the output, let's just make that clear. So bearing in mind, this is a dynamic microphone. It's not USB, it's dynamic. So there is the USB-A input, which is the wider one, as we used to have before the new little tiny USB-C thing. That plugs straight into your MacBook or your PC or your Mac desktop computer. And you just select it in your sound setting, and it becomes your FaceTime mic. It becomes and it's super low latency. So you're not going to get that horrible delay. You're not getting any of that nonsense, and really fantastic audio quality as well. So there's no loss. But the reality is, if you're doing audiobooks, for example, or something like that, talking news for the blind, the quality of audio is going to be there anyway. You're not going to be worried about it. So this thing's coming along. We've just got them packaged and ready to go. £19.99 it's selling for. And
Wow.
do you know what? I took it a step further. I was thinking, what happens if you want to put it into one of these things? So I bought, and here you go, right? I got the Apple camera kit. So this is very specific for anyone that's interested. It's the Apple camera kit. And what it does is it takes a USB-A, so the wider USB connector, into the Lightning connector, plugged it into my phone, and I, in fact, fired up GarageBand in this and on my iPad. And lo and behold, in it goes.
Wow.
In it goes.
That's brilliant.
I will add a caveat. You don't have much control over gain, of course, but you do have the gain controls in GarageBand, which are, it's electronic. It's not going to do anything for you. But if you want to go out and just have fun, you can do it.
Capture the world,
You could be out and about walking around with your iPhone and your Pod mic and your Podcast Pro here, doing a recording or an interview or something. You can be sat in a cafe doing something in the street. So just things we've been thinking about, how to meet this new market and support the customers.
Amazing. We've got a couple of questions. Mike Ayton said, very interested in the birth of the...
Hey, hang on a minute.
So yeah, and the birth of the Aria and the Abbey Road collaboration. Cellists seem to love this mic. Yeah, do you want to give us a story on that? Because wasn't it used by a rather famous singer on a rather famous track?
And I'll tell you another story to that as well.
Oh yeah,
me.
I've got that mic.
I know. I've been desperately trying to get that mic back for so long. The thing is, I get so busy that I forget about everything, and then he comes to see me and reminds me that he's got it, and then I forget. He's now reminded me.
Why are you reminding him?
I've got an entire world of witnesses now, which is great. No, I'll try and condense this down. So, back in 2011, we started this journey, which was, look, we're into making application-specific microphones now, and bizarrely enough, we don't actually have a vocal mic. And realistically, yes, lots of the mics we made were good for vocals, but I wanted to create just a top-end mic for professional use. And so the journey began. Okay, well, what's the most common pickup pattern for recording vocals? It's cardioid. So let's just make it cardioid only, no messing around. Okay, what's the most sort of renowned vocal mics? Okay, valve microphones. So we're going to valve tube, whatever you want to call it. So we went down that journey and came up with an incredible circuit design and put together this very nice edge terminated capsule, which is a single-sided capsule, not too dissimilar to an AKG CK12. So you basically have, when I say edge terminated, you've got a completely clear diaphragm surface, like a drum head, and then around the edge of it is where the connections are made, the terminations for the electronics. So essentially, this came together and began to sound quite special. The price was going up and up and up in terms of component build, and it was getting scarily expensive, considering our most expensive mic at the time was £650. And this was looking like it was £1,000. And I'm thinking, we can't do this. We just can't, because the customers won't take it. Anyway, I kept going, and we got the prototypes made, and we handed them round, and we were working with an incredible guy, Paul Epworth, the producer. And Paul is just so eminently talented. He is one of the most humble, modest men you will ever meet, to the point where I came into his studio for the first time. He'd bought some mics from us and asked to try some others. So I came in and I met his assistant, another eminent producer engineer now, Mark Rankin. And Mark said, "Oh yeah, just pop the mics over here. Paul's loving these." And there was this other fella just sort of shuffling around in the corner. He'd actually hurt his leg at the time, and he was walking on a stick, but just sort of kept out of the way and kept quiet. And then he went, and I asked Mark, I said, "Oh, is Paul coming in today?" He goes, "Oh, that is him. That was him." He's like, "Oh, okay, fine, no problem." Next time round I met him, I got an email, and he said, "Oh, could you pop down to the studio and can I try a couple of these other new Saturns and stuff? So in I went, and I'm sat with Paul, and he played this track to me, and he says, "Oh, you're only the third person to hear this, but I just want your opinion. You've got good ears. Put this song on." I said, "Goodness me!" He says, "That sounds like a James Bond theme. It's amazing." And he says, "It is." Like, what? And it was basically Skyfall, and I said, "That's not singing, is it?" And he said, "Yep, that's Adele singing on this one." And of course, he'd already done his work with her on 21, I think 19 and 21,
Yeah.
and I mean, just astonishing. And he'd been using throughout my the Apollo, sorry, not just the Apollo, the Aria prototype at the time, and that got used for various bits and bobs. How much of it made it on track, I don't know, but one thing that we're incredibly proud of is that the Apollo, our stereo ribbon mic, was used for the piano. So the opening piano chords that you hear that start that entire song off is our microphone there. So again, incredibly proud of that association. And I will be coming back for that mic, James.
You can try. I'll fight you for it.
So to get back to your gentleman's question, so through that journey, another part of that was we were introduced to Abbey Road. And so I came into the studio, and Andrew Dudman, who is the senior engineer there, a lovely guy, really incredibly talented guy, amazing ears. And I just said, "Oh, I'm here. I brought some mics for everyone to try. I've got the new Ari." He said, "Oh, fantastic. We've got a session going on at the moment. There's, I can't remember if it was writing for Sherlock or one of the TV themes. There was can you remember what it is? Lisa's here. I'm not talking to myself. But anyway, whatever it was a major TV theme that was being scored. And the composer was Michael Price, or is Michael Price. And again, incredibly talented composer, British composer. And they saw me in the control room, and there's this London Metropolitan Orchestra in the live room all getting ready. And Michael said, "Oh, what's going on in there?" And Andrew hit the talk back and said, "Oh, Trevor from Sontronics is here, and he's brought his new mic." And Michael said, "Oh, can we try it?" I'm thinking, "Oh, you're joking."
No pressure.
No, this is just for test. Anyway, they threw up the aria on a cello. And I mean, oh my goodness. So next to this cello was one of the U-47s that John Lennon used to use. So, I mean, the Abbey Road's mic history is legendary anyway, but one of these U-47s was John Lennon's mic. It was on the cello next to my prototype aria. And the orchestra struck up again, and then we listened to playback, and Michael turned to me and said, can I keep that? It's like, no. He said, "Well, I want a pair. Can you get me a matched pair when they're ready?" He says, "Of course." And I tell you something, I mean, here's the curious thing. Just as you said, Podcast Pro sounds great on snare drum, to hear another professional turn to me and say, "Your vocal mic sounds incredible on cello," that wasn't what I'd set it up for. And I'm not a cellist, and I don't know any personally, or didn't at the time. But do you know something? When Michael got those first pair, suddenly we started receiving calls and emails from other session cellists saying, can I get an aria? Can I get an aria? And I think there can't be any session cellists in London that don't have an aria. So,
well, I interviewed Peter Gregson, good couple of years ago now.
There you go.
And I remember talking to him and him saying, "Yeah, my first call microphone." I mean, he's probably one of the most recorded session cellists in the country. Probably.
He's astonishing.
Scary. And there it is. Pulls in an aria. Just he doesn't even. I mean, that's not to say that the mic positioning is not important, but he doesn't spend hours positioning it. He puts the mic roughly in front of the cello and plays. And I go, "Oh, that sounds rather lovely, doesn't it? That really does sound rather special."
I mean, this is what you see, and this is what I have to say. I love this so much when all of the tech speak and blah blah blah. Get rid of all that. I mean, look, I'm not some wizard engineer or anything like that, but I've got a pair of ears that appear to work and have worked for me all my career, and it should be kind of organic. It's like people are always desperately looking for answers, looking for books and blogs and goodness knows what, Wikipedia pages to tell you where to put a microphone. Forget it. Just pick it up and move it and listen and just use your own ears, because if you're in any way connected to music and you love what you're doing, you'll work it out. And if it's not working for you, then you'll realize that it's the wrong mic, or it's the wrong guitar, or it's the wrong amplifier, it's the wrong this or that. There are no prescriptions, none whatsoever, that I can find other than phase. Phase and microphones. If you've got more than one microphone, you've got to pay attention to how the two signals come together. But even that can be compensated in software now. I remember the first time I saw phase correction, and you see these two sine waves suddenly go whoop over each other. Like, how the hell does that happen? But ultimately, learn your basic engineering skills, which keeping phase is one of the most key, because it saves you having to do stuff after you've recorded. And I think, as I said, from my point of view, seeing someone pick that mic up, put it in front of a cello, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is not going to work in the way I hope it. Oh my goodness, it couldn't have been any better. Nice. So I hope that answers the question. The connection to Abbey Road, I'll just step back a couple of tracks on that, is that an amazingly lovely chap called Pete Beachill is one of the session trombonists for the London Metropolitan Orchestra, and also the BBC Strictly Come Dancing big band. And Pete is, oh my goodness, is such an incredible musician. And he was introduced to me by Anders from Avid. Do you remember Anders?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And
Anders Glantz.
Correct. So Anders and I had become friends years and years before, and he'd got involved with our mics and loved them, etc., etc. And Pete had come to him and said, look, I'm using the software and all this Pro Tools stuff. I can't actually record my trombone in the way that I'm hearing it. Same thing that I had with my guitar amps. So he said, look, talk to Trevor, because he can sort you out. So we got introduced, and Pete said, look, I've got money's not an issue. I've got a Neumann this, and I've got a this and that and the other. He got all the equipment, absolutely amazing. So I set him up in a studio with 3 mics, one of which was a valve mic of ours, which was very similar to what he already had. One was a condenser mic, which was going to be wrong. That was my control. I knew that was going to be wrong. And the other was a Delta ribbon microphone, which was hopefully my magic silver bullet. Anyway, he played into the valve mic. Yeah, it's similar to what I've got. Perfect. So I got that right. He played into the condenser. Oh, too brash. Perfect. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Played into the Delta ribbon mic and didn't stop playing. And I thought, I've got him. So he finished that and just came back and said, Trev, this is amazing. This is my sound. Rolling forward a few months, he bought those mics. He bought the Deltas. He bought two Deltas. And I got a call, and he said, Trev, he says, I'm recording in Abbey Road in a week's time. Why don't you bring those mics in with you? Because I'm going to be bringing mine in. And he had bucked the trend. He turned up at Abbey Road with his mic, with a Delta, when there's, priceless collection there already. So he'd already stirred the waters, and that's typical Pete. He's fantastic like that. So I'm sat in the back of Studio 2 control room, like a little kid with 3 ribbon mics there, thinking, oh God, I can't interrupt the chief engineer. But they stopped the session, and they put this. He says, what's that mic down on the trombone? And Pete's on the talk back going, oh, it's the Sontronics, the guys in the studio with you up there in the control room. They're like, oh, right. And he turned to me, and the guy was a bit snippy. I won't say who he was, but he was a bit snippy. He says, do you have any more of those? And I said, yeah, I've actually got, he says, take them down there. So they ended up on euphonium, and I think it was a tenor horn or something like that. And that was it. That was the beginning. And then about 6 months later, I got an email from Abbey Road saying, hello. In fact, it was from Lester Smith, the chief technician, one of the most darling people on this planet. And he said, Trevor, we've been in touch through Paul Epworth, who brought his Apollo to the studio, recording Skyfall and recording the Steinway D Grand in Studio 1. and we were so impressed that we'd like to meet you. Please, would you mind coming down and having a chat? And that was it. And that was 9 years ago.
Amazing.
And since that moment, we've had probably one of the most wonderful relationships I could ever imagine, because we're treated like family, and anything that I develop, I can take there and they will put to test for me. And I don't think I could ever dream of a better beta testing environment in the world. So,
it doesn't get much better.
It doesn't. And it absolutely doesn't, because the people that I'm in touch with there are the best of the best in terms of humans and connection to music. It's not about money. It's not about glamour. They are studio technicians and engineers, and they love the equipment that they work on. So when I come along and I bring a new piece of equipment, it's like Christmas for them, and it's like Christmas for me. So we're all happy. So I hope that answers the question in a very long, short way.
Well, the next question sort of segues into the next question, talking about the Delta, because Jack Duxbury, hello Jack, he said, "What a true gent Trevor is. I lust after an Apollo 2 and have been blown away by the sound of the Delta on that pedal show week after week," which is true. So, I mean, one of the most popular guitar YouTube channels, which is that pedal show. They've got them all over the amps, haven't they? And they use them every single week.
They do. Well, Jack, hello. It's very lovely of you to say that. That's an extra 10% discount on your Apollo for those kind words. No, Jack and I bump into each other at NAMM again every year. He comes along and does the Andertons podcast or video cast. And again, another burning ball of energy. And I love it.
He sure is.
And he was in your seat 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right.
2 weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Lisa mentioned this to me. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Jack came along, and Jack's another Dorset boy from Weymouth way, if I'm not mistaken. And, when we first met, it was just like, bang, we got on so well. So it's very nice of him to bring up those nice words and nice comments. Well, to go back to that story with that pedal show. So this is again, everything that we do is woven and interwoven this incredible industry of ours. But Lisa, the co-owner of Sontronics and my darling wife, she used to work in Bath, which is a massive publishing hub. And when I say massive, the publishing hub's massive. Bath isn't. Bath is an incredibly beautiful, tiny city. But it's a hub for music publishing and the general press as well for magazine publishing. And that's where Lisa was working. And she was working in the same group, I think it was the Future Publishing Group, with Mick, who is one of the co-founders of that pedal show, and also his wife Catherine, I believe, as well. So that connection pre-existed, and we'd known Mick from, I think, Guitarist magazine, if I'm not mistaken, and so we'd sent mics across for review from time to time. But we weren't, I won't say in any way we weren't close, but we were very cordial and very, very nice relationship. Anyway, we started seeing that pedal show thing, and they got in touch and asked if they could get some mics for their studio they were setting up, and we didn't really know what was happening. So we sold them some mics, and they had some Orpheus, the big spherical grill condenser mics. They had a Halo, the dynamic mic for guitar amps. And then I kept badgering them, saying, look, you really, really should try this Delta, because it's designed for guitar amps. So lo and behold, they did, and they tried them out, and that was it. But nothing much happened since then, and it went on for about a year or so. Excuse me. And then I was in the process of developing Delta 2. In fact, all of the second revision of our ribbon mics, and these were made in the UK. They had incredible circuitry and components and transformers, which are made literally a mile away from here. So this was such a boost. I mean, the quality, not that the previous product was in any way not good, but this was a step up. I mean, I'm so proud of them. And what you've got now is this linear characteristic from around 45 hertz all the way up to 9K, as flat as a pancake, which means that all the expression comes from you. It's not the mic. So put it in perspective. So imagine you got your fretboard and you're playing a low E and you're playing a top E and you're using exactly the same pressure and in your arpeggio, but suddenly one jumps out or one drops down in level, but you didn't do anything. Well, that's common in so much audio engineering. You know, you're sat there and you're having to play around. That's because the mic's frequency response has peaks and troughs. So this linearity, and this goes all the way back to what I was saying about when I was struggling with my guitar sound. The problem was, what you have to think about is what you're recording is your amplifier. You're not recording the guitar. The guitar has got an incredible bandwidth. When you add on the harmonics above and below the fundamentals, let's say 2 subharmonics and 3 overtones, you've got about 20 hertz to around 9K of data that belongs to a 6-string guitar. That's it. So that gives you a really nice rounded image. Anything else is extraneous. So if you put that into perspective, if you put a condenser mic in front of a guitar, you've got 11 kilohertz of what?
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the guitar, reflections and stuff, basically. It's the room. So what I'm looking for is just the guitar sound. But I'm not. I'm looking for just the amp sound. And when I started looking deeper and deeper, you realize that the best amp speakers, something like a Celestian or, I don't know, Electro Voice or whatever, the best they could offer was 75 hertz to 7 kilohertz. That's it. Nothing more. So you've got 13 kilohertz data on the audio spectrum, which is entirely irrelevant. So when you actually overlay the frequency response of the Delta 2 over your guitar amplifier, every frequency is picked up in a linear fashion. So there are no peaks or troughs. It's all up to you. It's your hands, your pick, your control, and this is how those mics work. So we then got back in touch with Mick and sent them a couple more mics, and yep, they bought those 2 Delta 2s, and those have been rocking on the amps for the last, well, I think about another year. I think it's almost been a year now. So
great.
That's how that worked out. I'm very happy too.
Cool, amazing stuff. I mean, say I've been a massive fan of your work and microphones ever since the year dot. When am I getting my Corona for snare drum?
You're such a swine. You keep making me do this. It will happen.
It's only because I do that because of my. I'm going to use the word job because it's such a dirty word. I get the time to do these crazy things, you know. Which, if you're in a pressured session environment where there's a client paying by the millisecond, you don't try that, do you? You're very lucky in an Abbey Road environment where you've got engineers who are going to say, well, you know, we've had experience with this dude's stuff before. Let's try it again. Whereas I've got the ability to try stuff and the time to get creative and try crazy stuff. I mean, I
was just sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, I mean, you've hit a nail on the head. You know, workflow these days is the buzzword for everyone because you're getting paid diddly squat, basically. You know, one's desperate now to cram in as much business as you possibly can to pay the bills, for goodness sake, especially all these poor folks that are not able to go out and you know, play live. I mean, goodness me. So, you know, without going off too far off a tangent, yes, if you've got the opportunity to experiment, you know, if you are sat in a studio now, or you've got the opportunity to do it, experiment, use the time to become creative. And this is, you know, frankly speaking, we have not had a spare second on our hands at all this year, not a spare second. And you know, what you got to remember is that we hand build everything. So we've employed a further 3 people since March full time in Sontronics, and it's been incredible the fact that we spent all of this effort and energy making hand-built products. So when it comes to the creative time, where do we slot that in? And that's where people like you come in and say, Trev, can you do this? So, you know, if I weren't doing this tonight, I could be sat at home coming up with a little drawing, 3D printing it tomorrow and saying, James, I've got it done.
Whittling it.
You're gonna have to wait till Friday now, but we are.
But it was one of those things. I tried the The Corona,
Yes.
that I always refer to as the new Halo, because
Yes. Yeah.
But of course, the Corona was actually created as a vocal mic initially. I understand.
Yes, correct.
But because of its similarity to Halo, the first thing I did was stick it on a guitar cabinet. I went, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Hang on. If it sounds nice on that, I bet it sounds cracking on snare drum.
Yeah.
And it does. But the only problem that I found with the Corona is its physical size.
Yeah, it's supposed to be on a snare drum. So I mean, look, you had done exactly the same thing. So when Paul Epworth and Mark were recording Florence and the Machine's album Lungs, they had all of their mics set up at the time, and they had a Saturn. And I remember driving back from Beethoven Street Studios, which is where Paul was originally, and I got a text message from, I think it was from Mark, and I pulled in at a service station and just filling up with fuel. And I read this message. It's like, oh, just to let you know, Trev, we've just tried the Saturn on snare and it's amazing. And I'm thinking, how on earth have you got the Saturn, which was, I mean, it was 20 centimeters across. How have you got that on? They did, and they recorded with it. And the way that they were being creative was quite incredible. And, it is when people are creative, that's when it makes me very happy. I mean, yes, if you want a mic for a specific purpose, we do that. But if you go outside the box slightly, it's like the DM1B, the drum mics. You remember when we produced those? The producer Flood, again, another incredible friend of Sontronics. He wrote back to us and said, hey, we've just been recording the Editors' new album back then, and we've used the DM1B on bass guitar amps. Well, we would never thought of that. It was a kick drum mic, but actually it's astonishing for bass guitar amps. Astonishing.
It also sounds great on trombone as well, bass brass as well.
It works, doesn't it? Because it's designed for low frequency pickup, and you blend that in with the DI out of the head of the bass amp, and you've got all of the attack from that, and you blend it with all of the cabinet sound from the low end. It's just amazing. So for us, we are creating, it's almost like we're creating a cake and you're decorating it. It's, if we put it like that, here's a cake, here's a fruit cake. If you want to ice it, if you want to paint it pink, you can do whatever you want, but it will always be a fruit cake. If we could use that analogy. Well, I can't give you a lifetime warranty if you spoil it.
Safey has said, Mick from the Pedal Show says that even a very quiet mic'd up amp recordings sound better than DI plus cab sim. Is this something that beginner level home recording consumers can manage?
Absolutely. And what I would say is this, and I'm going to put this out there right now, if I may, chaps. Just get in touch with us if you want some advice. It's trevor@sontronics.com or info@sontronics.com. Please get in touch, because we've got, in the company itself, we've got close to 200 years worth of experience in the audio industry. Okay, so it's there. I've always said we are here. I said I want to be a legacy. I want Sontronics to be a legacy brand, that we're here to assist you. And who is going to take on the next steps when we're gone? I don't know any new microphone brand makers at the moment coming on, so we're here to give advice, to help encourage people to step out of their comfort zones and push boundaries. So when it's recording amps at home, one of the things I've always said to people is this, and when I do my presentations, I've got a particular diagram which explains the difference between amplitude and volume. Okay, these are very different things. Amplitude is loudness, and volume is how much space you fill with that loudness. A volume, it makes sense, doesn't it? However, most guitarists included go 11 because I want to sound loud. But what happens is your amplifier gets to about 5 on the dial, and then it kind of bottoms out, or it levels out, I should say, rather, and doesn't get much louder. What happens is it introduces all sorts of harmonic distortions. If it's a valve amp, if it's a transistor amp, it can start to clip, and basically the waves square off, so it clips the waveform. And this is awful. This sounds terrible. So actually turning the level down a bit can actually really help. And you're not overwhelmed by this wall of sound, so you're not panicking about where the amp needs to be and your neighbors are getting upset and all this sort of stuff. Turn it down. And if it's not loud enough, then think about, okay, do I need to build a little enclosure for my amplifier in order to cater for absorption of those sounds and bringing that level down, acoustically treating that space? I have actually got, when I developed Delta, I built what I call the rock box, which is a 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot piece of MDF box on casters filled with big dense foam inside, and it's got a 5 watt valve amplifier inside. And I can tell you something that will strip your head clean off if you listen to it at full tilt. All right. But inside the box with the lid down, sorry, it's almost silent, almost. And it cost me 40 quid to make. Okay. Just next to nothing really. Now that with your microphone inside, perfect. Because then what you have is something that you don't see when you go to big concerts. But when you go when you go to a big gig and you're watching, I don't know, Metallica or whatever else, you see these wall of amplifiers on the stage or cabinets, but the sound isn't coming out of those. The sound is coming out of the huge PA that's hanging either side of the stage. What's behind those cabinets is a box not dissimilar to what I've got, with an amp inside and a microphone that's being fed to a mixing desk. And that sound is then amplified into the PA. So what you see is in fact a show. It's staging. It's exactly that, but it's a prop on the stage. If you saw, I went to see Status Quo years and years. They were users of our mics, and you know what? Walls of speakers, and they're all just fronts. They're all fake fronts. Not the
some of them even got lights in. So
absolutely. So the key is to answer that question. Simply turn it down and listen. Use your ears are you hearing what you want to hear? Just being in the room with an amplifier saturating, for example, is an incredible experience, but it will destroy your hearing. Okay. And that's a really big deal. And I'm going to go slightly off tangent here because I see so many, including my own children, with earbuds in all the time. And please get rid of these things. Okay. Having music pumping into your ears that close all the time is a disaster for your hearing. You don't know it now, but in 20 years time, you will have hearing damage. So the message is keep it quiet, keep it down for a bit, and learn to see what the levels are doing. If it's breaking up, if the distortion is if you're recording distorted sounds, which is usually the one that you want loud because it's saturation. If it's not giving you that full saturated sound, consider getting one of those enclosures or building one yourself. Or you know what? You can make a makeshift thing with chairs and duvets and pillows. It works. Trust me, it works. It doesn't look nice, but it works. All right. So give that a go.
I can heartily advise the Grossman cabinet that Paul sold me.
Right.
Is
perfect. Mm-hmm. There are some amazing ones out there. I mean, you know what? As I said, if your budget stretches to it, then the professionally made ones, professionally built ones, they're amazing, absolutely amazing. So, but the thing for guitarists is turning it down is the absolute antithesis of all rock guitarist methods. But in fact, it actually helps. So maybe they should start all amplifiers like 1, 2, 3, 11, and then that's it. That's all it needs to be.
So true.
It wouldn't have been so funny in the film, though, would it?
True. Final tap.
So we've done our hour, and
wow.
And yeah, I know that was a quick one.
Thank you.
Do we have any more? Have we got any questions? Any more questions coming?
There is actually another question. Yes,
well, I'm happy to stay as long as you need me. I know you probably want to get home, but
excellent. Fine. Cheers, Trevor. David Brose says, "Is all spectrum analysis done digitally now, or are there still microphones?"
Okay, so I'd probably need to know what that was referring to in terms of application. I mean, are we talking about in the manufacturing or testing of mics?
I would have thought he means in the field, graph. Basically. Yeah. Okay,
so when if we're talking about spectrum analysis of a room, for example, microphones are still absolutely fundamental because, in my opinion anyway, because what we're talking about is trying to emulate the human ear, and really here is an interesting situation. So when we do our testing of mics, there are two methodologies. So one is just the electronics themselves. So you can take the capsule off and you're just listening to what the electronics are doing in terms of response, frequency response. Okay. So that is a true laboratory test of the circuit itself. You have to put a load in where the capsule will be to replicate the actual resistance of the load and the capacitance. But beyond that, you're not using the transducer at all. You're just listening to, or sorry, not listening to, you're playing the sine through those components and it's giving you a response. But then comes the transducer response. And you know something, you can go to anechoic chambers and you're in these places where there are absolutely no reflection. So all you're hearing is this absolutely pure response of your microphone's transducer, which is a laboratory method. But I'm also more keen to find out what the mic does in a real world free field environment, because that's where it's going to be used. And what does it do? How does it respond when it's in that environment? How does it respond when it's not in a perfectly prepared acoustic room? It's, recording studio, for example. How does it do that? And so we do still use analog microphones in that field all the time. And I think that will continue to be the way for a long time. I mean, if you're going out in room analysis these days, you can use your iPhone and you can get the software, and literally using your iPhone's microphone or, any smartphone, I guess, you can use the mic in there, but it's not optimized for these things. This is the problem. There are too many areas in the industries which are crossing over, none of which are professional enough. And there's a problem. If you want to go full tilt on measurement software, you are going to have to buy the hardware to go with it. You're in for 10, 20, 30,000 pounds before you've opened the box. It's serious equipment. We ourselves, and what I will say is those microphones are generally omnidirectional, because they are not having any sensitivity in terms of pressure gradient when they're getting close to the source. So you don't get a tilt at the low end, a proximity effect in any way, because Omni microphones are pressure sensitive to all frequencies equally. So it will always be an Omni mic to measure that room for analysis. So I still see that being the future. There are the MEMS microphones, these tiny printed chips, which you can use essentially electricity to steer a beam of audio, which is in fact we use MEMS inside these things. These tiny printed circuit microphones live in these small technologies now, but they still have inherent noise. And when I've studied this, because we were looking at ourselves some time ago, and what we found was that the noise that was in those tiny chips was greater than we've experienced from a transducer, a traditional capsule. So there's still a little way to go. But watch this space. You never know what comes up next.
Yeah.
I think we've come a long way in the last 5, 6, 10, 20 years from microphones. So who's to say it won't carry on?
There's some evolution. There's still some evolution, but I still sit there and I laugh, because the reality is majority of people, I mean, dare I say middle-aged white males, generally speaking, are still nostalgic about something that was built 70 years ago, and that continues through the generations. So, I don't see, ultimately, as I said earlier on, the microphone technology is just like the wheel. It doesn't really need to change if it's doing its job well. You can make some embellishments to improve it. Do I want electronic controls on my mics in terms of adding Bluetooth connection and all this sort of stuff? I don't think so. I think it complicates the music making. But do you know what? Some people are doing that, and good for them. It's interesting. Do I want to make mic modeling? Why would I want to do that? It's very interesting, and it's a very intelligent way of developing and in bringing in modern technology with vintage old technology. But actually, why not just make a really good analog microphone? And that's my perspective, my take on it. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see these other guys in the industry coming out with really modern concepts. But actually, what I find is, and when I think back to that Avid 11 rack, it's got too many functions and features. I just want to play my guitar. And that's it.
Absolutely.
Well, Trevor, it's been an absolute joy to have you on, mate.
Thanks, Trevor.
I could chat with you for hours. We can go down super nerdy microphone holes because, say, as pretty much everyone who knows me knows, mics are my catnip. And
True enough.
The collection is growing at a dangerous rate. Mainly thanks to you guys.
Well, we'll help you scratch that itch.
Well, and according to Trevor, one of those microphones is coming back very soon.
No. What Trevor forgot to mention is I actually paid for that microphone. Money changed hands.
Did it?
I think it might have been for a different mic, but yeah, no, that's fine. I'm sure we can work that out.
You know where it is.
No,
and it's perfectly safe.
It's been very nice to be here, and I have to say I do appreciate the great kindness that you've shown us and the respect that you've shown us throughout these years that we've known one another. And also I huge respect and shout out to my team. I mean, Sontronics isn't just me. It's João Neves in Portugal is my chief engineer. He is a phenomenal resource and support to me, and a great friend. We have João Ramoa, another engineer again in Portugal, a part of our electronics development team, with whom I couldn't do what I do without those guys. And in the UK, we have Chris Cook, who is our senior technician and engineer, building microphones every single day of his life now, which wasn't what he had in mind when he first left university. And we have Ollie, Ollie has just come back to us. He was our intern in 2018 from Birmingham City University. And we loved him so much, and he did such a great job that we offered him a job just a couple of months ago, and he joined us on Monday, this past Monday.
Amazing.
So we were delighted that he's back with us. And we have Francis Morton has joined us in the administration department as well just a month ago. And this team, I mentioned Gary Waldron, who does our 3D design as well. All of these people together, but not forgetting the number one, Lisa Coley, who's hiding in the background. Come and say hello to everybody, please, because you're always hiding. Without Lisa, none of this would happen. Okay, she's definitely hiding. You can get.
There she is.
Hello.
Without this person, well, things wouldn't be where they are today. I can tell you that. So, no, from the Sontronics family, much love to everybody out there, and thank you all for your support. And all I can say is I wish you all well, to stay safe, stay sane, but keep busy, keep working. If you do need advice and anything really, music related preferably, just come back to us. As I said, it's info@sontronics.com. We're very happy to help you, and thank you for listening.
Great stuff. Well, say thanks out there for everyone who's joined us. If you're not listening live, I can say firsthand that Trevor is one of the best resources of musical and technical knowledge that I have. So expect more emails from me, mate, to be honest.
I'm always happy to help.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is obviously going to go on to the YouTube channel. So for those of you who weren't with us live, where were you? Not sure if we're doing one next week yet, because quite frankly, I'm going on holiday.
Unbelievable.
I know, it's disgraceful, isn't it? So we'll let you know what we decide to do. Paul might fly solo, or Jen might let me take my laptop on holiday. Who knows? But we'll see you again soon, and take care, everyone. And it's good night from all of us. Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Good night. Take care now. Bye-bye.